Good morning, everybody, or afternoon to some of those people in the East Coast. Welcome and thanks for joining us today. I'd like to make sure you can all hear me, so could you push your little raise hand button so I can see if you can hear me? It should be on your control panel. I apologize for the echoing. I'm in a conference room that I didn't realize would be a little echoing, so I'll try to minimize that as much as possible. Okay, well, we have some people. Good job. I'm glad you're all awake. Thanks very much for joining us. This is always such a great topic. I enjoy it every time I go to a conference because I get such great ideas from all of the people attending. It's like we're a bunch of zookeepers. One of the reasons I titled this seminar the way I did was because I think that student staff actually pick up their clothes off the floor, smell them, and then decide whether they can wear them that day. So it's kind of interesting to see if they would wear dirty clothes to an interview. I also want to test your raise hand tool again by raising your hand if you're looking forward to winter break, the end of the fall semester, or holiday cookies. Hopefully that will get everybody. I know I'm looking for break. This is our finals week, so we go on break next Monday. I did make a mistake in your directions for using the tool, the GoToMeeting tool. They do not have a chat feature that everyone can see, but we can do questions. So as you have questions, go ahead and type them, and I can read them to the group, or we can unmute you. If you raise your hand during the session, I can unmute you, and you can actually talk to the group if you have a microphone attached to your headset or computer. Okay, so let's get started. As you know, managing students is not a one-size-fits-all. You have to find what works for you. This is a little bit of information about my group. We call them Technology Consultants, or TCs. You'll hear me refer to the word TC, TCT, which is a TC trainee, and TC coordinator, TCC. So that will be totally confusing for everyone. I also utilize a student leadership team to help with the operations of the organization. They apply to me and are selected from the larger group, and they are actually amazing, and I couldn't do a lot of the things I do without them. I have an administrative coordinator, two training coordinators, a help desk coordinator, an AV center coordinator. When a TCT, a trainee, finishes their training, it's 8 weeks, and completes their consultation test successfully, they are certified in lab services, which allows them to assist users and do lab maintenance shifts. The AV, help desk, digital media specialist, mentoring, and facilitator all require additional classes and certification. Now I have a question from Kevin, so I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead, Kevin. Are you there, Kevin? Kevin Boyton?
Oh, sorry. I apologize. I didn't realize I still had my hand up.
Okay. I will unmute or mute you again. Sorry. I have a question from Sandra. Sandra Reardon? Okay, no question. All right. I'm going to clear everybody's hands again. Now, the TCs need additional certification to do these particular things outside of the lab services. I also employ a systems administrator who is a computer science major because we run 2 servers for our own communication and timesheet programs. And then my group also decided this year to do community outreach. And we do volunteering at the local school system because they only have one IT guy for all the local schools. And so they go over and help him do imaging, set up computers, do updates, and all sorts of things. I look at this as a learning experience for them so that they have all these opportunities to learn about being a mentor, workshop facilitator, so that it all looks good on their resume. Let me tell you a little bit about me so you know that I do have experience in this topic. I have currently 87 students and full-time technical staff. I kind of see myself as a creative management person. I don't like to do things because they've always done it that way, and that's sometimes hard to do in academics or hard to avoid. I like to try new things. I believe my job is to provide the resources to make my team superstars. So all that I can do to help them do their job makes me look good. And I just think it's kind of interesting, if you figured out all of the things you actually do, would they all fit on a business card? So let's talk about hiring. We're going to have another webinar in February on training. So this is basically just on the hiring aspects of student staff. The first part of it is advertising your job. You want to make sure that you get the best students that you possibly can. So I'm going to give you a little poll right now. Make sure you're paying attention. And go ahead and select and let me know how much competition that you have for student jobs. Okay, I think we got everybody. Let's see. So most of you are at several other departments are competing for your student workers. We have a few people who don't pay well, and the next biggest one was that there are a few jobs at the same level, which is where I fall. We're in a small rural area, so we have few jobs in the town to compete with what we're doing. Let me just share that with you. I'm a little slow on the tool. Sorry about that. Okay, for Grinnell College, this is some of the stuff that we do for marketing. I only want to hire first year and second year students. So we go after them prior to them coming to school, send them emails in the summer along with their brochures about what we do. We try to have them fill out applications in the summer since it's online so that they're all ready to go when they get here. We put up crazy posters all over campus, things that are not boring, very eye-catching. The cards that you see there are business cards that we attach to candy, and we do this thing called tabling, which means we set up a display table right at the entrance to the dining hall. And so as the students are coming by to eat, they can stop by as they're waiting in line and talk with our student staff about the job and get a little card with some candy that has the URL so that they can give an app or put in an application. We let them know that it's 8 weeks of training so that they invest in that and can accept the fact that they're going to have to give us some Saturday mornings. So if we don't want the people applying for this job if they're not going to be able to commit to the training. A few years ago, one of our students wanted us to have propeller beanies for a general uniform. The others didn't really like that idea, but we decided we'd dress up our team that helps the students and parents when they move in. So in August, we have this group called the Beanie Team. And they get together, they all get a propeller beanie and a tie-dyed shirt, and they assist the students with connectivity and kind of doing help desk stuff out in our dorms. And so this has actually become a really neat marketing tactic because we've had several students apply because they see us out doing this kind of work at the beginning of the year. And it really caught on too, so a lot of people will say, go to someone with a beanie and they'll help you with your computer. We do this each year, and it markets not only the help desk, or not only the jobs, but it also markets our help desk services. Also, you need to make the job one that students want. One of the reasons we get so many applications is that our job is known to be fun, to give you lots of experience, And you need to market those things, especially if you can't pay a good wage. Can you raise your hand if you tell me if you're paying your students less than $10 an hour? Raise your hand. Oh, quite a few of you. I know in the smaller, we're one of them. We pay our students $8.25 per hour, and so that's a little bit better than minimum wage, but sometimes not competitive elsewhere if they can get a better job in the town. Another thing we do, another thing we do are social events. Doesn't require a lot of funding. We have a pumpkin farm here in town with a corn maze because we're in rural Iowa. We go bowling, we do turkey bowling. Some of you might know that's with frozen turkeys. We have Geek Olympics, movie trivia, Jeopardy games, and then we give out Golden Disc Awards. These are 5 1/4 floppies. I was able to buy 500 of them on eBay for $10. And I think most of them, I think they were made before these students were even born. But that's kind of a neat little cultural ritual as we give out our Golden Disc Awards. We have a great community feeling with our group. So I think the best thing would be to try to create some type of team, even if you get together just to have cookies. I also involve those interested in decision making. We involve our student staff to come to planning meetings and to get involved in projects that they might have interest in. That creates a nice team spirit and buy-in. You don't need a lot of money. It's nice to have funding. Sometimes you don't have funding. So you can do things like Geek Olympics and movie night with just popcorn. So be creative. It doesn't take a lot of money to make people think like they're part of a team. Here's some ideas for advertising that came from the survey. Besides needing funding, marketing the level of experience they obtain working for IT, which I think is very important. That's one of the things that you can give your students that does not have a dollar value at this time. Remember too that these are digital natives, so advertise in ways that they will respond. We're looking into doing some video. We'd like to do some commercial type things. I have a question from Bonnie. She asked, why do we only have first and second year students? Do the others, because of the obvious longevity. That's basically what it is. I'm investing a lot of effort into training these students, and I want them to at least be able to work for 2 years for us. So we don't want to have a senior or a junior come in, they spend a semester training, and then only work a year or a semester. So that's not worth it for us to do that. One of the ideas one of our students just gave us was to put up posters that say, you might as well get paid for it, because they said their friends are always asking them to fix their computers anyway, and they do it for free. So why not have a slogan, you just might as well get paid for it. And I think that was kind of a neat idea. We might try on our next group of hiring posters. Can you raise your hand and tell me how many of you have online applications? Oh, not very many. A lot of you must still be using paper applications. We have created an online application basically for the ease. I believe in doing all I can online. It saves me a lot of work. Let's see, one more poll. Tell me what you look for most when you hire a student. This is something I've tried throughout various years. Sometimes we look for more customer service, sometimes we've looked for more technical. It seems to shift from year to year. Okay, let me show you what we have. Ooh, 76% of you look for good customer service personal skills. And the next was problem solving. So that's interesting. And then we have a few people that just hire warm bodies, which I know that that's a problem with several places. So I appreciate that you're willing to tell us that. At least we don't know who you are. It's all secretive. The interesting thing is one year we had quite a few computer science students, and so people started to think that our job was just for geeky people. And so then we started marketing more to the humanities side of things, thinking, well, we can teach the technical. Well, that didn't work either, because you got to have some kind of technical expertise, even if it's just a little curiosity to be able to handle computers. And so I think we found a happy medium where we just look for kind of a mix, because I believe you can teach a lot of the customer service. I don't think, however, you can teach the problem solving. I think that's something that you have to look for. The more effort you put into your applications also, the less work you're going to have to do trying to find, or at the time of interviewing. So put some effort into your applications. Ask questions that you might even ask at the interview to help weed some things out, or weed some people out. This is our application disclaimer. We use an online application, which I gave you the URL in your handouts. This is something that right up front I want to tell students what they're going to be getting into. So this is something that we're telling them they're going to be accepted as a trainee. They're not actually hired until they complete the training program, and that we score to provide or invite people for interviews. I also, for grading applications and for interviewing students, I use our student leadership team. So I am not the one doing any of the hiring. My best student staff, in my case, the student leadership team, goes through all the applications and scores and determines who gets interviews, and then they go through and do the interviews. This is our expectations disclaimer that's right up on the application. So it says right in the beginning, this is what we expect you to do as a trainee. If you can't do it, please do not apply. I want to be very clear on the expectations. I don't want students who are going to come to me after they've been hired for our training program and say, well, I can't make it on Saturdays because I have tennis practice. Just because they are accepted into training doesn't mean that they're hired yet. We want to make that clear, that they have to complete the training successfully in order to be hired full-time. I think that our training program also weeds out the undesirables too, because that ends up showing us who is not responsible, who shows up, who doesn't, who makes it on time. So they're not actually hired until they complete the 8-week training program. A little bit more on expectations. The first meeting we have after we've hired some students, we have an orientation session where we go over our handbook. We have an online handbook with several policies. They're strict policies. I don't have trouble enforcing policies because they want the job. It's a good job to have. And so, for example, if they miss 3 shifts in any 2 consecutive semesters, they're suspended or they're fired. And this is missing a shift, meaning no call, no show, not missing a shift because they're sick or they had other commitments. They have to be able to work 6 hours per week. Things like headphones are not allowed. They're not allowed to do homework. They need to follow the procedures for posting a substitute shift or someone to get a sub. This is part of this reason is to weed out those who are not responsible, and it usually weeds out 1 or 2. One of the main focuses is communication. We want to make sure that the students are communicating to us if they have any trouble, if they can't show up, and so we let them know that they're responsible for their shift up until 24 hours prior to the actual shift. So if they don't get a sub and they don't let us know, they're responsible and it will be counted against them as a missed shift. One of the other things that's important is to tell them why you have this. You know, the reason why we don't want you to do homework, other than the obvious that we're paying you, is the fact that you do not appear approachable by other people if you're sitting in a lab doing homework. You're there to service the lab, you pay attention to the people using the lab, and to provide good customer service, and you can't do that if you're tied up with your homework. And so I think the more we tell them why we have certain policies, I think the better off we are. One of the things I learned due to an incident of claimed against us for bias was that we switched to a mathematical scoring system for our applications. We used to just kind of read through and determine who we wanted to interview. Then what we decided to do is change to where each answer is given a score, and I usually have 4 or 5 people doing the scoring, and then we take the average scores to figure out who's going to get interviewed. We were a complaint was made of cultural bias against us because we use the American term approachability. So when we told some students who were European, at the time we didn't hire them, that they did not appear approachable, that was something that they said was biased against them. And so we've decided we would score all the applications. So now all we have to do is say, well, your score wasn't high enough. If you look at the example that I have there, the cutoff, this is actually from last spring, our actual students, our cutoff point was after about 20 students. Those are the ones that we actually gave interviews to, and you can see the difference in the scores. There's an actual gap where the scores changed from 70 to 64. So that to me is a big enough gap to determine this is a place where, you know, the skills change. The ones in yellow are the persons that we ended up hiring, and you can see some of the people with the lower scores actually did get hired. So their interviews were much better than they actually scored in their application. You could go a little lower if you needed to have more people hired, I think, but in our case, I don't want substandard people working for us just because I need warm bodies. And so that's why we determined where our cutoff point was. I don't want to just interview people with lower scores just because we want to have more people to interview. Here's some application ideas that came from the survey. I love the questions, tell us about this, give us an example. I think those are the best things. I know some of you are stuck using paper applications or standardized applications because you have to use the one from HR, or the college may have a generic one that they use. So in those cases, it seems like you could somehow have an online supplemental screening or, you know, pre-interview application or something that you could ask some questions to help you screen out the employee or the potential employees so that you're only interviewing the very best of the pool. I think it was interesting also, we had several people who commented that they asked questions, what is an IP number? So they're expecting their applicants to have pretty high score or technical skills already coming in. I don't have that luxury. We end up having to teach a lot of the technical skills. So that's not something, I don't know that we would get very many students that could get through that question, what is an IP number and how do you find it in Windows XP? We had some people who care about GPA and academic hours, which is interesting. I kind of look at it as it's the student's responsibility for their job, and it's up to them to determine if they can work the hours that are required. I love the question, what is the last book you read? That was an interesting one for the application. This is our application at Grinnell. One of the things, or a lesson that I've learned from managing students, is that I can never assume anything. The stuff in the middle there, attention to detail, conventional grammar and diction, I would think that they would know. If I wanted to fill out an application right now, I know to use proper grammar in English and be neat. But that doesn't actually happen. A lot of times you have to teach the students that. When I was younger and started babysitting jobs, my parents would say things like, leave the house cleaner than you found it, or arrive 15 minutes early. And so there are things that I was taught when I was a younger person that helped me have this work ethic that I have now. Don't assume that the current students get any sort of training. And for some, this is their first job. So you're the person that has to train them if you want them to be successful. We tell them that they submit their application, what's going to happen to it, that they'll get an email notification. So we let them know that everything right up front, so there's no surprises. These are our application questions. I think they probably need some tweaking. We haven't really looked at them in detail in a couple of years. This last semester, our scores were pretty close, which is unusual. We didn't have a definitive gap in scores, and so we ended up interviewing 46 people for 14 slots, and I think my student staff was ready to just die because they had so many interviews to do. Okay, let's talk about the interview. When we start our interviews, it's done, as I said, by a technology consultant coordinator. This is what they read or memorize if they are so ambitious. They let them know that, what their name is, what we're going to do, what kind of questions we're asking, just because we don't want them to be scared off. We don't want anyone, they're nervous, it's their first time. We also have 4 students do the interview. That's a little bit intimidating. We try to go to a place like a beanbag chair room or some place comfortable with couches so that it's not 4 people sitting on one side of the table against the person who's interviewing. We also use the same questions with every interview, so we ask them to please not tell the others, what the questions are. These are all our interview questions. We do a 15-minute interview because you remember we've gained enough information already from scoring. So we already know a little bit about the people's technical skills and things. Our interview is 15 minutes with a 5-minute little chat time afterwards so that we can talk. Those doing the interviews can talk among themselves. We're really looking for communication skills. We find that as you get the students talking and giving instructions and telling you stories, you're going to get a good gauge of their communication skills, which you don't get that by having somebody fill out an online survey. One of the problems we've had in the past is we have several international students who apply that are new to the United States. They probably do okay on the technical side, but a lot of times their English is not very strong yet. And so on those cases, we tell them that they did a good interview, but we ask them to just please apply next semester. We just think they need a semester of kind of integrating and practice before their English skills are better. These are some great ideas that you had when I did the survey. I love the first one. If you're having a problem and called the help desk, what would you expect to help? What would you expect from them? I think I'm going to change some of our questions and take some of your ideas for us. I thought the one also, how would you respond to a user if you did not know the solution? Some of those questions are really interesting, and you can get the students' views on customer service through their answers to those questions. If you have to use a standard application, as I said, you could have some kind of pre-interview questionnaire, so you could maybe weed out some of the students by their answers to some open-ended questions or some essay questions. I love the what is your favorite it was broken and I fixed it story. I think that is nice because you don't have to concentrate on technology. You could use just about anything to do that, to answer that question. All right, are there any questions so far? Anybody want to ask something? You can just go ahead and put your hand up. Take a little minute here. Oh. Stephanie, are you there? Stephanie McCullum? Stephanie? Okay, I guess we don't have Stephanie. Go ahead and type a question if we missed you, Stephanie, and I'll unmute you again. Okay, anybody by a raise of hands gotten somebody like this to interview? Only 2. That's great. I have not had this problem myself. I'm anticipating it at some point, but thank goodness I have not had this problem. These are some of the challenges that were reported in the survey. The main one was, or the most common one was how to assess technical skills versus interpersonal skills, and what do you look for most. We kind of saw that from the first poll that most of the people looked for customer service interpersonal skills. So I assume that that means you can teach the technical. Is that something that you agree with? You can teach the technical, and does anybody want to share a story? Go ahead and raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Okay, come on. Anybody want to talk? Okay. What methods are used to determine personality, work ethic? I think that's another thing that you can gauge through the communication of the interview. You can ask questions as they're telling stories about how they might have helped somebody, what kind of problems they solved. I think you can kind of gauge a lot of that. One of the things that I have gained from having students do the interview is sometimes the students know them and they know the students that they're actually interviewing. And so we've kind of known some background information on the students, whether or not they're reliable, and that's helped us a little bit. By raise of hands, does anybody do any formal testing? Where you go out to a service or you have a web page that asks questions about Windows or something technical? We have one. Okay. So that doesn't seem to be very common. We don't do any formal testing ourselves, so I agree. I'm not sure if there's any good services out there. Beth, if I unmute you, can you tell us a little bit about that? Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I guess the more testing that we, do is we have a bank of technical questions, and then they have to answer those, and then we kind of can gauge what kind of technical knowledge they do have. So I guess it's more in-house than it is like outsourcing to a service or something.
Is it successful, you think?
I don't know. Like, it does help a lot. I don't know. You can't. I mean, there can be some flaws with that, or if the person's just like, oh, yeah, now I remember, because we do go over the questions during their get chosen. So, yeah, we won't pick someone who has like 20 or 40%, or who's taken it 3 or 4 times, But we do have some that are in like the 80s and 90s, and they turned out to be really good student techs.
That's cool. What is, so it's something you wrote in-house. Is it online?
Yeah, it's kind of an online thing that was made, I don't know how many years ago. It was before my time. And that's just what we've been using, and we've tried to refresh the questions as well every couple of years, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm going to mute you again. Now, Bonnie, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, when she was talking about that, it made me think at least if you did something, if you did some type of formal testing, you'd at least have a baseline to know where they start, and it should help a little bit with the training, right?
Beth, what do you think about that? I unmuted you.
Yeah, if they don't need a lot of training, then it's like we go through just what a lot of our processes are, and then if they need help along the way, we'll help them. But, a lot of them know quite a bit coming in as well. Yeah, we don't start at the same spot for every student. Definitely.
That makes training difficult, though, I would think.
Yeah, it does, kind of. But if we don't have, like, the way that we're split up, we only really have to deal with just a handful of students, like 4 or 5 from each team that we have, and there's only like 4 teams.
Okay.
So we don't have the 100, students coming in. So it, we can spend more time because of that.
Is this done prior to hiring them?
It's kind of on-the-job training, and they get a couple of semesters. And if we find that they don't work out, they don't work out. But we don't also have a lot of applicants either. like, but we don't do the marketing. So, I mean, there's probably some things we could do there.
Mm-hmm.
Find applicants.
Oh, great. Well, thank you. Bonnie, does that answer your question?
Yeah, but I was going to throw something back to you since I'm new to this. But like, would you? That was kind of what I was curious as to. Is it more difficult or more simple to start people at the same place with training and just assume that you need to go over everything? I mean, I'm just asking for opinion there.
I think myself, we start everybody at the same place. We do a combination of mentoring and workshops on Saturday mornings for 8 weeks. And they're put with a mentor in various locations during the week, and then on Saturday morning they come in for a 2-hour workshop. And we assume that they're all starting at the same level because I want to make sure that when they finish their training program, they all have this basic level of skills. And if it's something that they're familiar with, they'll get through it fast, they'll do really well at it. If it's something they're not familiar with, then they'll learn something.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Any questions or comments or share ideas? We have a question. Considering the no homework rule, what are the expectations for the student worker in the computer labs when they are not assisting patrons? It's still no homework in my case. They are allowed to surf the web. They can do anything that doesn't require headphones, so no music or anything because they'd disrupt the labs. But they can do reading online. They can play Sudoku, whatever. But they're not allowed to have all their books and stuff out and to be doing homework. If they want to type a paper or something while they're online, that's fine because they're interruptible. But I don't want it to appear that they're so engaged in their homework that the students won't come up and bug them and ask them questions, or they won't notice the printer breaking or something. Oh, the question. Okay, Beth, I'm going to unmute you again. We have a question. Where did you get your question bank? Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, sorry, could you say that again?
Someone's asking, where did you get your questions from? I'm going to unmute Maura.
Oh, the question from? Just
on your online thing.
From our heads. Kind of, I think the last couple of times all the coordinators have asked, or at least my boss asked us, hey, what are some questions that we could ask? So it's just things that we think up ourselves. We don't actually really go out there and get the questions from anywhere, I guess.
Maura, does that help you?
Yeah, that's interesting information. Thank you.
So you have to have that all in your head. Got it?
I mean, there's other places where you could probably look, but where we got them was just from our heads and what we think maybe.
Okay, sounds good. All right. One of the things I think is important is know what you can teach. I believe the problem solving, as I said, is an innate skill. I can't teach that, and I've tried, and it doesn't work out very well. But I can teach customer service. We do a whole session, a whole workshop just on customer service. We have them do listening exercises. We have them do this thing where they have to sit in partners back to back and instruct the other person to put dominoes in a certain pattern. So we're teaching them to be able to give clear instructions if they're on the phone at the help desk and they can't see what the person's doing. We teach them what questions to ask. For some reason, in all my 25 years of being in IT, I don't know why, but users lie. And so if you never want to ask them a yes or no question, I can say, is your computer on? And they'll say yes. And instead, I should be asking, what color light is on the computer? Or, can you go over and plug it in and unplug it and plug it back in? Because for some reason, they just lie to you, and you're not always getting good information. I do agree, though, that some technical ability has to exist. We can't train all of that. And I think there has to be some kind of curiosity or people that like to tinker with things. As I told you, we tried one year recruiting everyone from humanities, and that didn't work out very well. One of the things you guys said, and several of you said in the survey, was the time commitment required for interviewing and training. So raise your hand, tell me if you are using students to help you with any kind of interviewing or reading applications. Not very many. I do myself, as I told you. I'm going to erase your hands. Now raise your hand if you'd like to share how that's working with the group, please. Using the students to help you do scoring and interviews. Okay, April, you're the first one up. Go ahead.
Oh,
How-
I'm sorry.
No?
I really have trouble finding students in general, so actually having them assist with it is really tough.
How many students do you employ?
It's been going down over the past few years, but right now we only have about 20.
Mm-hmm.
We had lab assistants, we had audiovisual students, and the student help desk. We've since actually closed all of our labs, so the numbers have really gone down because we did keep our labs open from 8 in the morning until midnight. So I had a lot of students to cover all of 3 different labs. So once we got rid of those, my numbers went down drastically, and it's a lot harder. We had more warm bodies in the labs than we did, for the student help desk, and finding students with the technical ability is really tough now.
Do you have a lot of competition?
No, we just can't find any that, we've managed to get a couple of really good ones from the computer science department. But I've had our job posted for probably 2 months now, and I've had 2 students apply.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No.
So you need to market.
Right. I was going to say, obviously we're not doing something right.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. All right. Anybody else? Raise your hand if you're utilizing students to help you with scoring or going through applications and doing interviews, and how that's working for you. You guys are too shy. You just don't want your voice recorded. Is that it? Oh, here's a question. Lynn, she has no mic. One of my favorite questions to ask during the interview is, what kind of puzzles do you like to do? Students who solve problems like to do puzzles, whether they're Sudoku, crosswords, logic, jigsaw. Students who don't like to do puzzles generally won't be good troubleshooters. That's a great idea. I never thought about doing that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so I'm just going to do a shameless plug for our SIGUX organization. We have a Ning online group, and we also have a great email list. So if you're not part of that, go ahead and join. You can go out to the sigux.org website and join that. This is great conversation, and one of the things that has helped me so much over the years, especially with students, I managed real people before I came here to Grinnell College, and I never had managed students before, and so it's kind of a different animal. And one of the great things that helped me was being able to just talk to other people that also manage students. I have gotten some wonderful ideas, and one of the reasons my program has been so successful, I think, is because of sharing ideas and stealing ideas from other people. And I think it's really important if you guys have a network of people that you can go out and talk to or ask questions of. I think that's a really great thing. We're such great resources for each other. And when I first came to Grinnell, I attended a SIGUX conference in Denver, and somebody from Penn State did a presentation about how they did scheduling for their student staff, and that was what sparked my idea to get a program going here. And so it's been amazing how just that one little kind of tweak just has blossomed. And now we're actually going through some evolution right now to our program, because I'm finding that students in the labs, they're kind of becoming sloths. They don't really do much of anything. They just sit there. We have very few times where they're actually having to provide customer service, and I think part of that is that the students who are utilizing the labs are digital natives. They don't need as much help anymore. 10 10 years ago, everybody needed help with how to put their CD-ROM in the drive and how to make sure something's printing. And nowadays, digital stuff is just part of who they are, and so they don't need as much help, or they can figure it out themselves. So I'm trying to take those students from the labs, and we're trying to figure out how to put them in other areas. We're going to try some online help desk stuff and more lab services type things where they're going around troubleshooting computers and checking for paper and checking for toner and that kind of stuff to make sure everything is at least working properly. So it's kind of exciting this semester because we're into some of this cool planning. And I have a student planning team that's actually involved in that. So I get more buy-in if the ideas come from them. Okay, we have some more questions. So let's talk about questions. Andrew Lyons, I'm going to unmute you. Hopefully, do you have a mic? Are you there? Andrew? Okay, I don't think he has a mic. So his question is, we use student staff to run triage interviews and application reviews and then do full interviews of the best candidates based on those results. Their input has been very useful. 3 to 5 students interview candidates as a group and record and discuss their impressions. I totally agree with that. I think that's what we do. We do 3 to 5 students at an interview, and I think it's amazing how tough they are on each other, more than probably what I would be. Another question, Lucas, which email list, whoop, I'm sorry. Guys, your questions are coming in too fast. Which email list are we referring to? The SIGUX student management list. If so, I'm a member of that list and there's little or no traffic on it. I don't know about a student management list, but there's just the SIGUX discussion list that's open to anybody. And then there's also a member list which doesn't get a lot of traffic. And so maybe you're on the member list because that's not quite as busy as the discussion list. But if you go out to the websites or send me an email after this, I'll be happy to give you the links to join. Another question, Maura. I work at a high school which is starting a one-to-one program. We are looking into hiring our students to help with support. What should I be teaching them now? What should I focus on to make them better student employees when they get to college? Ooh, that's a great question. Anybody want to respond to that? Go ahead and raise your hand and I'll unmute you. What should she be teaching the students now so that they could get a job when they go to college? Anyone? No recommendations, huh? Maura, I'm going to unmute you. Are you there?
Hello.
Go ahead and explain that a little bit more. You're doing high school?
Yes, we do work at a high school. We're probably going to be doing an iPad program next year, and we'll be looking at adding, 1,600 devices to our 3-person IT team. And we're looking at using some of our student workers, the ones who are on work study. It's a private high school. So what kind of things would be helpful as, 4 years from now when they go to school, or even 2 or 3? What kind of qualities do you want in your IT department, which will be more than just iPads?
Problem solving is my biggest thing, being able to troubleshoot. They have the curiosity a lot of times, and they seem to, at least I see my niece who's in high school right now, she'll just like fix something. If something's wrong with the computer, she just does it. She's not afraid to do that. I think that's a really good quality. I don't know that all students are like that, but I think that's important to be able to just not be afraid and try to learn how things work and be able to fix things that way, or at least have the curiosity to do that. You can train, I think you can train a lot of things like customer service maybe, starting to get them thinking along a service attitude. Our school's really big on, volunteering in the community, and so that's one of the reasons my group started to do volunteer work. And I think that whole kind of how do you help other people is a neat feature, or a good mentality to have.
Okay, thank you.
Also, they're already using things like PowerPoint and Word. I know a lot of our students get here, and sometimes they don't know how to format a paper, or they don't know some of the functions of Excel. And their professors don't always want to spend the time teaching them those aspects of the tool. They just want them to be able to go do the assignment. And so I think maybe the more you can expose them to some of the more common programs, the better that would be as well. Okay. Anybody else? Let's see our next question. Oh, Andrew, you have no audio. Thank you. I have a question for everybody in the seminar. What is the ratio of technicians to computer end users? We have 6 help We have 6 help desk technicians to about 3,000 users, which are administrators, staff, and students. And Kevin doesn't have a mic, so anybody want to volunteer what their ratio is? Raise your hand and I'll unmute you. We're not getting good participation here. We have here at Grinnell, I have students at a help desk, so I can't really tell you the ratio. I guess it would be the equivalent of 3 full-time people, but then we have desktop support full-time technicians that are part of my team, and those we have 4. And so we have 1,700 computers, probably about 600, 700 users on campus, not counting students. I'm not sure if that helps or not. Oh, here we go, Beth. I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead, Beth.
We have maybe about 15 technicians, and then we have the actual help desk, the call center, that'll help troubleshoot, and then we have, I know, about 3,700 computers, and then as for actual faculty staff, that's probably about 1,000 on campus and off campus combined.
How big is how many students at your school?
Like over 10,000 that I do know.
Okay.
But then again, Ferris has campuses all over the state, like satellite campuses. So that kind of ups just everything in general.
Well, thank you. Anybody else want to share what their ratio is, technicians to users? I'm going to go on to the next question. Oh, April, your hand is raised. I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead. You have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hit it.
It's okay. I will mute you again, and we'll put your hand down. All right, our next question. We are considering using students to staff our help desk. What pitfalls should be aware of? Okay, you guys. Tell them the worst of everything. This is from Sheldon Jones. Let's hear some horror stories. I can't believe we're not getting anybody wanting to share any stories today. Oh, here we go, Dana. I'm unmuting you. Go ahead, Dana.
How are you?
Good.
Okay, I have one word, Facebook. And especially when times are slow and there's not a lot of calls and traffic coming in. Can you hear this okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. When our students are working at the desk and if call-in traffic is low, if walk-in traffic is low, if they're on the computer, they're on Facebook. And that really does create an unapproachable situation at times. And if they're really concentrating on their screen, and I've got a couple students who sit there and stare at it waiting for an update on the wall, they sometimes won't even see the walk-in traffic.
That's probably true. I haven't seen that yet, but I know it's happening. I think I'm choosing to just ignore it. Some of those things you just don't want to deal with. What do? Do you block Facebook at all, or just do they get in trouble?
We're consistently reminding them. Our basic policy has always been, and I always have to remind them every couple of weeks, is that when the phone rings or if there's any walk-in traffic, you immediately minimize anything on the computer that is not help desk related. And, you know, for a week or so after we remind them, they're pretty good about that. And then they just slowly kind of migrate away from that. And then they'll leave the screens up, but they won't be interacting. And then if you wait long enough without reminding them, the next thing you know, they're helping a walk-in customer while responding to a Facebook message. And
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you very much. All right. Next question, I would suggest communication and commitment to be prompt and friendly. This is from Jerry. He probably doesn't have a mic. And that is a great idea. That would be for the question about what to teach the high school students. Here's also 25. This is a response to the answer about text to users, 25 texts to 50,000 end users for call-in. We have extensive online help. Mora has 400 computers, 160 faculty and staff, and 3 IT support people. Lucas has IT at his college is decentralized. Desktop support group has 30 techs, staff, and students to 2,500 or so customers. Paula, we have 12 tech support students and over 10,000 staff, faculty, and students. Oh, Matt, you're going to give a story? Let me unmute you. Are you there, Matt? Matt? Oh, something's happened. Matt's not there. Okay, Lucas. Oops. The main student help desk is staffed by 1 staff person, 1 manager, and 5 students at one time with 25,000 students on campus. Wow, that's a lot. I'm never going to complain again. Lynn has staffing students at the help desk. Her biggest challenge is coverage. Our help desk is staffed only by students, and we are at the mercy of their class schedules. We have had times when instead of 6 help desk students on shift, we've only had 2. I think that's a problem with a lot. Scheduling, especially this, for example, this week is finals week, and so the regular semester scheduling ended last week, and then I have to beg people to pull in shifts. We have to have them take shifts at opposite, when they don't have finals, and so that's kind of a pain to try to get all our help desk and AV center staffed during finals week. Matt, if you're there and you want to share your story, go ahead and raise your hand. I don't know if you're back yet. Lucas is asking, what do you use for scheduling software? Grinnell, we wrote our own. About 10 years ago, I couldn't find anything that was worthwhile, and so we actually wrote our own. And it does more than just scheduling. It does a bunch of sub-shift swaps. It will do email to people who have taken a sub-shift. It verifies their certification before they take a shift so that they can work in that particular area. It puts together the schedule. It does timesheets. It has things like user information, so I know their phone numbers and their contact information and whether they're vegetarian, so I know what kind of pizza to order. It's a system that we have out on Google Code, so if anybody can do PHP programming, they're welcome to go out to Google Code and get it. It's called TCDB, TC Database is what we called it. We're starting to rehash that a little bit and reprogram it. This summer I'm going to hire a student to kind of reprogram it because there's some features I'd like to add, make it a little more slicker. It's kind of cumbersome sometimes, but it works really well for us. I'm going to, oh, Matt's back. I'm going to unmute Matt. Go ahead, Matt. Tell your story. We can't hear you if you're talking. Okay, I'm going to leave you unmuted until you can maybe get through and keep answering questions. Sheldon has reported they use whentowork.com, which I've heard really good things about that program. Anybody else want to share what kind of software they're using for scheduling? Go ahead and raise your hand or type in a question and I'll. There's another person that uses whentowork.com. Oh, and Lucas, you're saying it doesn't do everything you need. So you guys are using that right now. It might, I don't know if you have the resources, but you might try to find something and do something customized. It often doesn't take a lot of programming. Jim is reporting that he has a homegrown time and attendance program that they're in the process of replacing it with TimeLink. So TimeLink might be something you can look into. Here's somebody else who loves whentowork.com. Matt, we still can't hear you if you're trying to talk. That seems to be the most common software package is whentowork.com. Oh, Matt's broken. His mic's broken. If you want to type your story, go ahead, but if not, we'll catch you next time. I think I've gotten most of the questions. I'm just going back over these. Anybody else have anything that they want to either comment about or share a story or something before we wrap up? I hope this has been useful to everybody. It's been fun to have the students working with me. I've really enjoyed it. I used to manage just what I call real people, full-time staff at a software company, and this has been a lot of fun. The students keep me really motivated, and I think one of the things you have to realize too when you manage students and you hire and you know, they're not going to be with you, and so you have to get this mindset of you have this dynamic workforce. You don't have people who are going to stay there for 10 years and then retire. You have people who are going to come and go, give you the talents that they have while they're here, so utilize them the best that you can, even if it's just for 2 years. So the more that you can provide an atmosphere where they're learning and they're having fun and they're giving to you, the better it is and the easier it is when they leave and you have then to hire more people to replace them. Let's see. Oh, we have another question. Randy asks, what, if anything, do your lab workers do when they're not actively assisting lab patrons? How do you prevent them from becoming sloths? That's a good question. I'm not able to prevent them from becoming sloths. That's why we're kind of moving them around now, or thinking about moving them around. The students just don't seem to need as much help, and so they're not really prevented from doing anything. They have a checklist, a lab checklist. They have to make sure there's paper in the printer, the lab's cleaned up, all the machines are logged off, everything's working. They report problems that are happening to physical machines into our ticket system for our regular support staff. And if all of those things are done, they basically can surf the web and, I guess, look attentive. We try to teach them in customer service training to do things like walk around every once in a while, just kind of chat with people. We teach them a little bit about, well, you can tell by someone's body language if they're having trouble, if they're, you know, flinging the mouse back and forth at the glass of the computer, you know, it possibly might indicate that they're having an issue. So we want them to be able to at least be aware of what's going on in the lab situation. But as I said, we're finding that most of them are just kind of sitting there and not really needed. So I want to put people where the services are needed. And if that means moving them around more, we're going to end up putting more people at our help desk so we can do some of the online chat and things. I think that's what's going to have to be done. I have a question. Dana, are forged timesheets a problem for anyone? And if so, what are the consequences? Can anybody share a story about forged timesheets? Go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, Kevin, I've unmuted you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a student that was caught, it was probably about 2 years ago, and in the area that I hire students for, it's mostly a warm body situation, not much technical expertise. So that student was, of course, fired immediately, and a nondescript email was sent out to the rest of the students in the group saying this has been discovered on a couple occasions, so we, of course, have terminated and will not tolerate any future instances of anyone at all. Of course, we didn't mention the specific employee. We didn't even say that employee's been fired. We just said that we've removed employees in the past for this. And we do our best to try and catch those kind of things, but in our environment it can be difficult because the way our pay system is set up for student employees, it's essentially an honor system, so it can be difficult, and it's a one employee per shift, so it's not like there's multiple employees that can, you know, paddle on other ones. So it can be difficult, but
it seems like it would be really hard to catch somebody.
Yes.
Dana, I've unmuted you too. Is there anything you want to add or
No,
ask?
I just, in one of the previous screens, it talked about forged timesheets, and I was just curious if that was a problem with you or anybody else that's listening in right now and how it was handled. I agree with the fact that it's, you know, it is a lot of people on the honor system unless you've got specific software that requires them to log into their workstation. So it is something that is, you know, you might only just stumble across it, and it wouldn't exactly come out and, you know, catch your eye if somebody was doing it.
Right. If we catch somebody doing that here, they're fired immediately. It's called timesheet fraud. Now, our TCDB system, when they clock in, it records their IP address. And I get flagged if they're clocking in from an IP that's not one of our labs or where they're supposed to be. But that's something that I had to write into the program. I don't think there's anything around that does that kind of stuff. Also, Jim suggested, too, that they don't have a problem because they use electronic timesheets. So maybe if you could do something electronic, you know, or have time clocks. I mean, I know that's expensive, but have an actual punch clock where you go somewhere and you have to show up and be there in the lab in order to punch the clock. I know our library does that. The students have to actually punch a clock.
You mean those things that only the digital immigrants are familiar with?
Yeah, right. They scan their ID cards.
Uh-huh.
All right. I'm going to mute you again, you guys. Okay, our next question. I like the puzzle question. This is Amy. I like the puzzle question for interviews, but does anyone else have any other ideas for finding people who have good troubleshooting skills? Any ideas for Amy about finding good troubleshooting people or how you can determine that in an interview? Amy, do you have a mic? I've unmuted you if you're there. Oh, no mic. Okay. I am not sure myself. We kind of, it's kind of all incorporated in, I guess, what we, as they're talking to us and what we're asking. So I'm not sure if we have exactly what we do at the interview stage. Now, after they're trained, we give them something called a consultation test, and we actually give them, they have 3 questions, and what they're to do is to help a user that's actually sitting at a computer. So one of us pretends to be the user at the computer, and they're acting as the, you know, the TC or the person helping us, and they have 3 questions, and one of the questions does not have an answer. They actually will never get it. It's not something that actually has an answer, but we want to go through and see their steps that they use for troubleshooting. And so it may be something like that where you can come up with a question or an activity that you don't really care about, and that's what we tell them. We don't care that you find the right answer. We want to know, we want to see how you go about doing it. We also find at the end that most of them then will refer them on to desktop support, which is the right thing to do. So if they try and they can't do or solve the problem, then they say, well, you know, I'm going to have to refer you to this other group, and that's actually a really good thing too, that they actually remember that that's something that they should do. Okay, I don't believe we have any more questions. This is your last chance, everybody. Raise your hand or type something in. Otherwise, we'll take off for the day. I've really enjoyed talking with you, sort of, even though it's kind of been this web thing. I'm not sure if I like it yet, but it seems to work okay. Anyone who didn't get a handout, send me an email, and I'll be happy to send you out the handout. That's the result from the survey, which I think had some really good ideas. So that's, I think, the way that we'll help each other is to just give out ideas. And it may not be something that fits you particularly, but sometimes that just gives you, you know, leads on to something else that will work for you, because everything is not a one-size-fits-all when you're working with students. It's more of a, you know, trial and error. Don't be afraid to try things and fail too. I use my students as like a sounding board for a lot of things. They will, the worst is when I come back from a conference, because they'll say, oh God, you went to a conference, what are we going to have to do? But a lot of times I will try something new with them before I'll try it with my full-time team, just to kind of see the reaction. And they're very honest and will tell me if it's stupid. They'll go ahead and say, you know, what works, what doesn't. And they're very useful when I have questions about how we should handle something. They have some of the most wonderful ideas. And I think part of the problem, or part of the reason my program has been very successful over the years, is I've involved them in a lot of the decision making and planning. So if you can do that, also let them help you with interviews and applications. I think you'll be really lucky. I think we're all done. Oh, Lucas is also reporting that he has found students that have amazing ideas for improvements and streamlining. I totally agree with that. I think that's, You know, a lot of people don't tap that resource because they just feel like, oh, they're student employees. But that is it. They have some really wonderful things to share with you. So go ahead and utilize them as much as you can. All right, so I'm going to sign off now. Thank you all for coming. I will email those of you who did not get handouts and send you those. And if you have any questions, my email is on the handout, so go ahead and send me a note. And thanks for coming, and have a great holiday.